In January, I offered to run the Ministers' Book Group. I had just recently read Nadia Bolz-Weber's Pastrix, her memoir exploring her journey to faith, ministry, and the type of ministry that she was drawn to as she helped create a new community for people that most people would consider outcasts. I chose this book in part because on paper, Bolz-Weber looks like she should be one of us. She's heavily tattooed, she's been known to drop the occasional curse word from the pulpit, and she's pretty well known for being the queen of the misfits. Very much not the typical churchgoer, and the kind of person we say we mean when we say all are welcome here. In fact, she even writes about trying on Unitarian Universalism for a spell, and while she liked us, we weren't really for her. And that's okay. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that I found myself drawn to her, not just because of the obvious love we share of body modifications, but because with Bolz-Weber there is a deep honesty, if not a little bit of a brash authenticity. Her memoir is equal parts joyful and hopeless, elated and frustrated. She's honest about all of her alcoholism, her mistakes and faults, as much as she is with her faith and her successes. And there's something admirable about being truthful about the messiest parts of life. So when I brought the book to the group, I asked the question, as largely white and affluent congregations, how do we create radically welcoming spaces for those who do not see themselves reflected in our congregations? It's a pretty big question, and it's one that I have pretty big feelings about. It's not one I'm sure there's a simple answer to, but maybe there's just different layers. Of course, in true Unitarian Universalist fashion, the question was turned around on me, but with curiosity and kindness. Well, Casey, you said you came to UU within the last 6 years. What made you feel welcome? What made you feel like you had a place here? The subtext I read there was an inoffensive, looking the way that you do. And I said, that's easy. I was allowed to be me, and I always show up exactly as I mean to. I worried as I was writing this that maybe this sermon's a little too much about me, but if I'm going to talk to you about authenticity, I think that requires a vulnerability and maybe a little more about me than I would normally share. The person who came to Unitarian Universalism 6 years ago is a very different person from the one you see in the pulpit today. There have been successes and failures. There's been deep support and great loss. And yet through it all, every single time, I was invited to come into spaces exactly me, exactly where I was in that moment. And crucially, that invitation was genuine. You have a place here because we've made one for you. I won't pretend that that sort of welcoming is easy, and there is a difference between acceptance and simple tolerance. And I'm sure that I wasn't loved by everyone. I know without a doubt in the early days that my palpable grief made some people deeply uncomfortable. My general inability to moderate the volume of my voice was probably pretty grating. And my opinions, shared passionately and unapologetically, probably didn't endear me much to people who preferred not to rock the boat. But for the most part, I wouldn't know who, and I wouldn't know when, because when they said, "You are welcome here," they wrote that into our covenant together. You are welcome here, every stitch of you. And that's something that I have taken to heart as a minister in two different but two very important ways. And I've already started speaking about one of them. When we say radically welcoming, we need to mean it. We need to mean everyone, not just those we are in service to, but inviting everyone to be a part of. In Pastrix, Bolz-Weber laments that their cozy little band of misfits had gained a level of notoriety, and that people started showing up for the services, a lot of curious bystanders. The trouble is, those people were not their people. The house for all sinners and saints up to that point had been a largely LGBTQIA identifying congregation in the late 90s and early 2000s in Denver. It was no secret that her congregation had many people attending that finally felt like they had found a home that they had so long sought and had never before seen in a religious space. This uptick in outside interest was due in no small part to their minister's blossoming celebrity, and she found herself constantly frustrated that people showing up were not the ones that she was seeking to make a home for. "They look like our parents," she complained. Clearly, she was not being the bastion of the welcoming that they wanted for the normal people, the way that she had been welcoming to her beloved unusuals. Her come to Jesus moment was twofold. Her fellow clergy friend that she was lamenting to sarcastically bemoaned, "Oh, you have people who are interested in and want to join your church, but they don't look like you? How sad for you." A young transgender congregant, Asher, beamed at her one day. "These new people, they love us. And sometimes it's almost like having a relationship with my parents that I can't have at home." Our heroine was so caught up in the expectations of what should be that she was completely missing the magic of what could be. When we stop clinging desperately to the notions of keeping up appearances, we are introduced to new connections and greater possibilities than what just our assumptions invite. Being radically welcoming in this way comes down more to just who's in the room and who we invite. Being radically welcome is setting up the space to be inviting before we even make the invitation. It's in our music, in our readings, in our worship. It's in the work we do in our community as well as the work we do in committees and in services within these walls. In one of my classes, I'm in a small learning group with 3 other people of various gender identities, races, and backgrounds. I suspected before asking this question, because I had seen the answer before, that I knew what they were going to say, but I asked the question anyway. Honestly, would any of you invite your Black, Indigenous, or person of color friends to any of our congregations? There was a long silence, and then a little bit of uncomfortable laughter. My white queer friends, maybe. I don't know about my BIPOC ones. Not yet. That tells me that we are missing a space of genuine authenticity as Unitarian Universalists. We want to create diverse, welcoming spaces in our congregations, but I don't think we have yet figured out how to do that for people who are marginalized, particularly in terms of race and class, which are largely intersectional. The 8th principle and the potential rewrite of Article 2 in our bylaws are wonderful first steps to holding ourselves accountable to how we go about doing this. But it's not the end of our work. Indeed, it is just the first step on a much longer journey that I have no doubt will continue throughout my ministry in my life. I think a little of the key to being able to create those spaces comes down to our own presentations as individuals and as a larger collective. In that book group some weeks ago, part of my longer explanation for my ability to continue to create a home within Unitarian Universalism is my own regular practice of showing up as authentically as I can. It's by no mistake that I look and dress the way I do in the pulpit and in meetings. It's exactly as I dress outside of my work here, and that is with purpose. When I said the person that you see now is very different from the version of me that was first invited here 6 years ago, that's not an understatement. Subtle makeup, normal brown hair, not a facial piercing or visible tattoo in sight. There were all kinds of ways that I wanted to express myself, but I was terrified to. I didn't want to be seen as weird, despite the fact that I am kind of weird. I wanted to play with fun clothes, have vibrant hair, but none of that was nice. It wasn't respectable. It's not professional. I spent my whole life being told that wasn't the way nice, good girls do things. When my boyfriend died nearly 6 years ago with a laundry list of things left undone, I realized that I didn't want to come to the end of my own life and wonder, what if? What began as deliberately doing all of the things my little punk rock teenage heart had wanted to do very quickly became a spiritual practice of radical self-acceptance and self-love. I never saw any modification as a way to hide from the world, but to show up exactly as I meant to and take up space in exactly the way I wanted to be seen, not the way other people thought I should be. Loving myself on the outside has helped make it easier for me to love some of the parts that maybe I didn't nurture or care for enough. Every bottle of hair dye, every line of ink in a tattoo has helped me love the things in me that were already there. And as I continue to work on the things in me that have gone ignored, it's with this decoration that reminds me I am worth every effort. And admittedly, the look of confusion on some people's faces when they put the look of me to calling in ministry at the same time is pretty priceless. They look very confused. I know I don't look like the typical ministry professional, and that is equally intentional. By and large, this may come as a surprise to some of you, I am on the younger side for a UU that did not grow up in the church. I'm still considered a young adult for a whole other year after this. I'm 34 this summer. But when I show up fully, authentically me in the pulpit, both in expression and in personality, what I hope that does is open the door for someone else who might feel out of place. For people to know that they have a place, but are perhaps unsure if they can bring their whole selves here. Yes, I tell people with deepest respect that we are religion's answer to the island of the misfit toys, but one might find that a little laughable if you just looked around the room today. On average, we look pretty much like the people that Boltz-Weber did not want showing up at her church. This is not a bad thing. That's who we are. But what it can do is make people on the fringes feel like there isn't a home for them in our often very white and very well-off churches. Shortly after I began working as Anaheim's minister almost a year ago, we had a guest one Sunday, a young blonde woman, probably in her mid-20s. I clocked her watching me across the room after service. It's a small building, it's pretty easy to do. And when I made my way over to say hello to her, she broke into a great smile. I'm switching one of the words here, and you'll be able to figure it out in a second. It's so freaking cool to see you up there preaching and leading. I feel like my friends and I could come here. I haven't seen her since, but I hope she knew in that moment as I affirmed how welcoming our congregations really are. I hope she understood that she always has a place with us, if she wants it. More than once on this formative journey of ministry, eyes on a tattoo have helped bring down walls that may otherwise have been completely impenetrable. It's a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected of things can give us just enough of a connection to plant a seed of trust. When we show up fully, wholly, authentically as ourselves, whatever that looks like, it can be deeply healing for us and our sweet inner children. And when we work to love and cherish ourselves for who we are affirming our own divinity, our own inherent worth and dignity. We are claiming our place in this world in ways that help grow genuine connection. And when we find ourselves completely accepting of ourselves, the parts we like as well as the ones we don't, it helps make it easier to be more truly accepting of others. It's this kind of embracing that helps heal wounds across divides, because when we see ourselves as completely us and completely holy, we can see others as completely themselves and completely holy. It's okay to be serious or silly, quiet or loud. It is okay to hold those tender parts of us as well as the strong ones. The regular parts, the kind of weird parts, the parts we love and the parts we hide from. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be us. We're not therapy for each other. But when we can share the softest parts of us alongside the brightest ones, a special kind of magic can be born. So I invite you every day, in every way, to take up your space. Bring your whole selves to this community. I will always hold a place for you here. Every single one of you, every single part of you. You are welcome here, every last stitch of you. So may it be, and amen.